I've just finished reading a 2021 book about George Meade and his handling of the Battle of Gettysburg. The book is titled Meade at Gettysburg, A Study in Command, and it's by a man named Kent Masterson Brown. Pretty good book, especially if you're interested in the Battle of Gettysburg. What Brown does is to detail all of the actions that Meade took from the time he took command of the Army of the Potomac on July 28th through the aftermath of the Battle of Gettysburg. Specifically, what Meade did was to first get an understanding of the deployment of the Army of the Potomac, and it was huge. It was spread out all over the place. And to the best of his ability to find out where Lee and the components of the Army of Northern Virginia were. Very complex problem. Then what he did was to take steps to redeploy the various corps that were in the Army of the Potomac so as to get them between Lee and Washington and Baltimore on the one hand, and also in a position where they could do battle with the Army of Northern Virginia. Now, it's hard to underestimate the complexity of this maneuver. First off, the Army of the Potomac was huge. I mean, not only did it have a lot of men, 9 corps, huge supply trains, but also not all of Meade's generals were West Point trained. They weren't professional soldiers. They weren't trained in moving large bodies of men. He was operating with relatively poor maps, and to the extent that he had maps, the roads were not really in a condition to facilitate the movement of large bodies of men. Nonetheless, Meade pulled it off. Brown then goes into Meade's handling of the various components of the Army of the Potomac during the actual battle, and he spends a lot of time studying the aftermath of the battle, and specifically he makes the case that Meade's failure to immediately pursue Lee the way that a lot of people thought that he should have was totally justified in purely military terms. Now, Brown's book reminded me of another one that I had read with the same subtitle that I had read sometime before. The name of that book was The Gettysburg Campaign, A Study in Command, and it was by a man named Edward Coddington. And Coddington more or less reached the same conclusions that Brown did, more or less. Coddington's book is not quite as detailed as Brown's, but a very good one. And I've always thought it was a very good guide to the Battle of Gettysburg. Meade had lots of criticism both before and after the battle. After the battle, specifically the failure to pursue Lee, which, as I say, I think was justified. But even before the battle, in fact, both a lot of Union and a lot of Confederate generals really underestimated him. The one who didn't underestimate him was General Lee. When he found out that Meade had taken command over from General Hooker, and he was listening to some of his generals, run Meade down, what Lee said was, Meade is not going to make any mistakes, and if I make a mistake, he'll jump all over it, or words to that effect. And I think that tends to be true. In other words, where you thought that Lee was the single master of maneuvering armies, Meade was every bit his equal. Now, I'm not going to say that Meade had the same strategic sense that Grant had, where Grant was able to organize and fight an entire theater of war. But of course, Meade didn't have a chance to do that. And nor did he have, I don't think he had Grant's same relentlessness and ruthlessness. But he was damn good. He was looking for a fight. And as soon as he could give it, he did give it, which was precisely what Lincoln and Halleck were looking for when they gave him command of the Army of the Potomac. I think his subsequent behavior when he was still leading the Army of the Potomac during the Overland Campaign was conspicuously notable. I mean, he had the problem of having Grant traveling right with him, having Grant at his elbow. And you don't see Meade running Grant down. You see Meade doing the absolute best that he can to implement everything that Grant wanted done during that campaign. So anyway, I think that it's crystal clear that Meade really did win that battle. I don't think it was so much that Lee lost it. I think that Meade clearly took it to him and beat him. That's my assessment of George Meade. I think he was pretty good, pretty good. And by the way, that battle, Gettysburg, really merits a lot of attention. It's if you're any kind of if you have any kind of interest in military history, that battle really is, I think, rewarding. So anyway, brand new book, Meade at Gettysburg, A Study in Command, Kent Masterson Brown.